Direct from our newsroom in Washington, in color.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin.
Here's another late development.
We interrupt our program to bring you a special broadcast.
Finally, news you can use.
Here is the news for palace.
I got news for you, pal.
You guys, great news.
And in other news tonight,
I got news for him.
It could be the stuff of history, one way or the other.
While he was scheming, I was beaming in the beamer, just beaming.
KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk radio. This is the Sunday Morning News. I'm Shannon Farron in this week. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Let's give a hypothetical of a 50-year-old man gets caught having sex with a 14-year-old girl. He goes away 15 years to life, prison. 15 years, I think. If he pays her $50, he gets a citation. He gets a ticket. I want to welcome to the program State Senator Bob Huff. He is trying to change the way the laws are. Bob, are you there?
I am here. Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Great. So tell me about your bill, Senate Bill 982.
Well, Senate Bill 982 goes after the Johns, basically, because right now the penalties seem to be on the kids that are caught up in this, and it doesn't go after the people that are actually buying sex, and that just seems fundamentally wrong. The common excuse is, oh, they looked so old, and, they don't care how old they are. They just want to indulge their appetites, and we have to go after the people using it because the others are so often victims.
Yeah, a lot of people say, you'll go 5 miles per hour over the speed limit, but you won't go 50.
That's one way to look at it.
Now, how did you get involved in this? Why did this cross your desk?
My district is in the corner of LA, Orange, San Bernardino County, and ironically, my supervisors, not ironically, but Don Knabe was heavily involved in this, so I decided to join up and co-author one bill and ended up doing my own. But in looking at it, you always think this is happening somewhere else, and in the middle of all this, lo and behold, we have Aubriana Sade Parks in my district, Yorba Linda, stabbed, and she was previously arrested for prostitution in Santa Ana, and clearly, someone involved in the sex trade. So it strikes everywhere, and it's such an important issue. I mean, it's not going to go away without doing things differently. We've been tap dancing around this issue for such a long time that a group of legislators got together and decided that we need to just tighten up the rules of engagement, and if they go 50 miles an hour over the speed limit, they're going to get thrown in jail.
Senate Republican leader Bob Huff is on the show right now, and why have we been tap dancing around this? Why has it taken so long? I mean, this has been going on for years.
Well, I think that it probably because normal adults have a healthy appetites, and we codify them in committed relationships. But there's always people that have been stepping over the line in fulfilling their indulgences elsewhere, and so, whatever the reason is, it's been something that maybe people know of somebody that has, had illicit relationships. But that's one aspect of it. This takes it to the extreme to where you're having sex with kids. Maybe that's not who you asked for. Maybe it is. Some of these, go after really young kids, 11, 12 years old, and clearly that's a sickness. That's not just a healthy sexual appetite. But the problem is it is difficult to differentiate, and so we have been difficult. We've had a tough time in cracking down on it, and that's why we're trying to do things a little bit differently now. Go after the Johns as opposed to the victims.
Okay, what is the feedback you've been getting from your colleagues in Sacramento?
Well, truthfully, at this point of the game, they're not that engaged in it. The ones that have heard about it think it's good. I think this will sail through both houses okay. There will be, some tweaks to the language probably as we get different groups on board, not necessarily legislators. But the way that when we introduce bills, it goes first to the committee that's involved. Sometimes it's another committee. If there's fiscal, it goes to a fiscal committee. Then it gets to the floors. And unless you're on the actual committee that first sees it, you're not going to be as engaged in it. But there's been, of those that have heard about it, there's been very good support for it.
Over the Super Bowl time, the FBI was saying that it's like shooting fish in a barrel, catching these guys. That's how prevalent it is. There are a lot of people. You're living a good life, listeners. You're living a good life with your significant other or whatever. But there are so many disgusting people out there. This happens all the time. It's more common than you think of guys visiting prostitutes and underage ones at that. Senator, is there like a John's lobby? Is there a push to from, I don't know which group it would come from, but are you getting any pushback from anybody?
No, we're not getting pushback from anybody, and that's interesting. You say at John's lobby. The irony is lobbyists are generally very public, and I can't imagine that the Johns want to be public about anything.
Right.
So I don't expect there to see any organized pushback on this. There's going to be a lot of groans because really what my bill would do is the first time, and this was actually negotiated, we were ready to just, go crazy the first time around, but the prosecutors want to keep it a wobbler, meaning a first-time offense can be a misdemeanor or a felony, depending on how egregious it is. So it gives the prosecution and the judge a little bit of leeway. Second time, it would become a felony. And those are pretty severe consequences. So that does fit your analogy of 5 miles per hour over versus 50 miles per hour over. But it gives... It respects that there may be some situations we can't imagine, that lets those who are prosecuting it take care of it. But that second time around, okay, you weren't just caught going 5 miles per hour.
Okay, great. We're talking to Senate Republican leader Bob Huff right now. Bob, can you hold on the line? I just have a couple more questions about what you're doing on this front. Great. When we come back, more with Bob Huff on KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk radio. This is the Sunday Morning News. I'm Shannon Farron.
You're listening live. Guess what? We're doing it live.
KFI, more stimulating talk radio.
KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk radio. This is the Sunday Morning News. I'm Shannon Farron. Talked a lot about this week about sex trafficking of young girls in our backyard that are getting recruited into a forced life of prostitution and what we're doing about it. Right now on the line, we have Senate Republican leader Bob Huff, and he has a bill on the table right now in Sacramento that would not let these Johns off, the guys that are having sex with the girls, would not let them off with just a ticket, which is happening now, just a citation. The first offense would be either a misdemeanor or a felony. Can you explain, Bob, to the listeners who, maybe just don't know how it works, what the ramifications of that would be?
Well, I can't tell you all the ramifications, but when you're a felon, there's a lot of things that happen. You can't vote. Your voting is suspended as long as you're incarcerated. You get jail time. You can't carry firearms. It's on your record. I mean, felon is the kind of guys we put in prisons in the state. Misdemeanors are the slap on the hand, and it's got you once, don't come back again kind of a thing. But felonies are very serious, and there's serious consequences that go with it.
And one of the things with this human trafficking spreading in this country, the reason it's spreading so quickly, it's the third fastest growing crime in the country, and the reason is because the amount of money these people are making is insane. Per girl, they're making $300,000 a year tax-free, and a lot of these places have 4 to 6 girls. That's the average. And it's not just the gangs that are getting into it or the cartels. It's everyday people. It's mom and pop shops. And so the laws have gotten harder on the traffickers. But again, this is the first time we're really going after the Johns. Are there other bills that you're working on in relation to this, or your colleagues?
There's a whole package of bills, and I should say that it's about, you asked about how much support there was in Sacramento. We have a number of people that are co-authors on these bills. Holly Mitchell is one, Senator Ted Lieu, I believe Marty Block is one. There's a lot of us that have come together, each one introducing bills or co-authoring the other bills as well. Another bill, SB 955, allows wiretapping for those that are suspected of being engaged in sex trafficking. We already do that for drug dealing, some serious crimes, and others, but we've never put sex trafficking in that same lineup. So that's another important tool that can be used to track down the people that are doing it. It's a $32 billion a year nationwide problem, as you were talking about the $300,000 per victim, but $32 billion is a big, big business by anybody's standards.
Yeah, and so what's the timeline? I mean, I know that things can take some time up there.
Usually that's a good thing. In this case, it's not.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the normal bill process, we're in the second year of a 2-year term. So if you run something through with urgency, it takes 2/3 votes. If you run it through and that can go into effect right after being enacted. If you run it through the regular majority vote, then it would be done by, everything would be done and signed by September, no later than, and then take effect January 1 of next year. And sometimes we'll start things with urgency, but if we don't think we have enough support, we strip it and just do it down to majority vote. And I can't tell you right now how these things are going to be fabricated, but I don't think there will be a problem moving them through the system.
I was working with a guy named Phil Ludwig. He's a former San Diego cop, and he started a nonprofit program called Faces with 2 S's to rescue these girls. He has a safe house / compound up in Northern California where these girls can get education and they can get therapy and they can get all of that. And he said he has a really hard time getting people to pay attention to this because the details are so horrifying. He says he'll sit with somebody, whether it's a lawmaker or whether it's just somebody who may be supporting the group, and he starts talking about the problem. And he says about 4 minutes in, it's like a wall comes down because people can't even wrap their head around it.
Right.
Are you finding that too?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you asked early on, it was hard to come up with words about, why we haven't done anything about this, because it's such a vicious crime when you think about it. But we think perhaps society will say, well, 17-year-old, that's different. But if you look at, say, even somebody who's 20 that's involved in prostitution, most of them started as minors, and they were sucked into this. Nobody chooses this as a lifestyle. They just get pulled in. Often, it's estimated 50 to 80% were or are a part of child welfare systems, so they're looking for affirmation, they're looking for love. Some John sidles up to, not the John, but the pimp sidle up to them and tell them they love them more than life itself, and pretty soon they're getting love from all the wrong places, and it's just hard to break out of.
That's right. Well, Senate Republican leader Bob Huff, thank you for joining us. You're doing great work on this up there, so we thank you for that.
Thank you, Shannon.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Senate Republican leader Bob Huff trying to crack down on Johns who sleep with underage girls.